Well, time now for our first Today in Cowes. We're looking back at what happened at day one of the 2022 Cowes Week, of course supported by Visit Abu Dhabi. Matt Sheehan's out on the water. We saw a fantastic set of starts. I know we call it champagne, that's well used, but I think it really was champagne conditions here for day one. Matt, what did you see from out on the water?
Well, it was, as you say, it was a spectacular opener. I suppose, I mean, some people might think that the opening day of Cowes Week is often seen no breeze and people sort of anchor the rest of it. Well, today was anything but that. It was absolutely superb. The thing that stood out for me was the tide, and I think the tide ended up playing such a big part in so many starts, and not just because there was lots of it and it was flooding one, but because of the way that it switched during the day and it wasn't even tidal on the start line. So it was very interesting. It was a super tactical way to start the beginning of this week.
And great for spectators because they were all really close to the shore.
They were indeed, because there was a benefit, certainly early on, to being close to the shore, and there were lots of people that came out to watch the starts, and it was a great way to open it, really was.
Well, we have featured classes. It's a new thing for us here at Cowes Week, and we're featuring today, on day one, the Cape 31 and the J70, both of which got away fairly soon on the start line. But let's look at Cape 31's new boat. Great turnout, 18 boats here, and a lot of interest in them, as you can see over our shoulder here.
Yes, I mean, it is a really, really exciting class, and I suspect that we're going to be talking about this class quite a lot during this week. As you say, they're just here. There's 17, I think 17 of them in the fleet. Last year, there was 6 or 7, and it looked pretty good then, and we had a hunch last year that this was a class that was going to be pretty exciting and deliver some good racing. Well, goodness gracious, it certainly has, and there's a lot of people have validated that by going and buying boats. So 17 boats out there, great racing, very tight. It's very interesting. I did a dock walk this morning down there, and it's quite surprising how many rock stars there are who suddenly appeared on the scene and are on boats. Oh, hello, what are you doing here? Oh, well, I'm sailing on this boat. And you know, you'll be talking to an Olympic gold medalist one minute and an amateur owner the next. And I think for me, that's, apart from the performance of the boat and apart from the fact they look really exciting to sail, I think what's even more exciting is we've got this broad spread of appeal from pros to amateur sailors. It is an amateur boat, actually. You have to be an amateur to drive one of them. But I think that, I'm hoping and I think that will bode well for this class going forwards.
Okay, let's take a look at the start. Oh, pushing up. They're all going to be early on this line. It's 35 seconds to go, so plenty of time.
They're all sitting there. Look at them all trying to burn speed by letting the jibs flap, all the sails flogging, trying to take the power out of it. They're all going to be early. Who's that? Kickabatic, who's just gone to the left of screen here, is just over the start line. In fact, look at the boat starting to bear away, desperately trying to get back behind the line. Several of these are going to be over. This is going to be pretty messy.
There's
in fact,
Tokolosh.
you can see Tokolosh here.
Yeah, that's gone by. They're all coming back.
Look at the boats bear away. Everybody's going to be early here. In fact, a good player out of here might be 3112 in the middle of screen.
That's Arabella.
The Arabella going back early.
General recall. No, not a general recall.
Individual,
just a single.
I think.
Yeah, individual recall. A lot of boats over the line though. That's going to be tricky for the race officers.
Well, if you're just to butt in there, I was actually sitting right on the line at the outboard end of it, and from my eye, and obviously that's not an official eye, I could only see 3 boats that were behind the line at the start. Yeah. So it's pretty easy to identify the bad boys by just picking out the good ones.
They're being generous here at the start line. Well, that's what it was like for the start of the Cape 31s, but for Matt, what was it like for you out on the far end?
Well, it was really interesting because I was out at the pin end looking down the line, and it was quite interesting because it was easier to see the number of boats that were behind the line than those that were actually over. So many of them were over. They've been swept over by the tide and their enthusiasm to get off the start line. It's a very, very competitive fleet anyway. So in a funny sort of way, often when you get a lot of boats over the line, it gets quite hard for the race committee to identify the bad boys. But in this case, it was quite easy because all you had to do was to identify the 3 or 4 boats that were behind the line at the start. So it was a bit of a bizarre start. And what was interesting from then on was that we were then looking to see how many of the boats that realised they're over the line actually went back to restart, because with the tide sweeping the fleet so fast down to the west, The problem is, the more you delay that decision to go back, the more tide you're going to have to plug, and the more painful it's going to be to go back, to get back behind the line, turn around, and then start again. But some of them did, and actually, those that did, it paid off for them. And I spoke to a couple of them afterwards. I mean, it's actually been a bit of a tricky day for teams, because they've got in to discover that they're over the line at the start and the rest of it, and there's been protests and all kinds of things going on. So it's a bit of an odd way to start the week. But I spoke to a couple of sailors. I spoke to Olympic sailor Nick Rogers, who was on Harlequin.
Perfect Cowes day. We had a great wind. It started light and then filled in just before the start, and mega course. I mean, it was all action packed.
It was pretty full on at the start, wasn't it? From my viewpoint, there was quite a few boats over at the start by the looks of it.
Yeah, it basically, the northern end of the line was against the current. The southern end had a massive back eddy, and I think the guys who sort of got themselves towards the biased pin end ended up being massively pushed over the line early, and we were one of them. And we did this kind of bailed out, jibe round, and ended up coming back round and tacking.
How do you think you've done overall?
Apparently we might have won. There's a few OCSs, if not we're third, which we're really happy with as well.
And what about the boat? I mean, it looked like the day developed into a full-on foam up downhill at times.
It was. It kind of got windy on the last beat home, actually, and so it didn't really kick in before then. But the boats are, perfect. Really good sailing boats. A little bit hectic. 17 of them, and they're big enough that that's a pretty big fleet. So it was really good. Hence the reason the start was chaos.
And you're doing the whole week?
Yep, doing the whole week. Johnny, I mean, today was great for us because the crew are super fresh. First event we've done together, so really good. And a nice finish we had as we sailed up to the finishing line. There was a boat called Sam, so it's a good memory of Sam Richmond, who was on the team, and nice doffing the hat.
And there's a real buzz around here, isn't there? I mean, with 17 of them down here in the Haven, and loads of people that, I haven't seen here for ages.
Yeah, it's been a really great kind of resurgence. I think the boats suit the Solent really well, and they're really high performance and they're good under IRC, and so they're just fun boats, challenging, mega physical, around the boat. So it's good. I think everyone's enjoying that.
So that was Nick Rogers' day, but I also spoke to someone else, Russell Peters, who's been in this class from the start and is back here this year, and he talks about the tricky decision that he had to make at the start. Russell, how'd you get on today?
We were a bit lucky in the end. We were second in the end because two other boats beat us, but they were disqualified for being over the line at the start, the dirty, filthy cheats.
It was a pretty frantic start, wasn't it? Everybody squeaked.
It was a very frantic start with a bit of tide underneath you, and you had to be in one place, and we all got there a bit early. So we were over, but we went back, so we had to come from quite a long way back through the fleet. We got back up to third, which would have been first easily, but we changed the jibs halfway down a run, which was stupid. And then the wind, we changed thinking the wind was dropping, and it came up to 22 knots, so we had the wrong sail on.
It was quite a punchy beat home, wasn't it?
It was a very punchy beat home, especially when you've got my expensive sails being ruined on the first day. Was a little bit sad, but and especially as that actually probably lost us the race as well. Anyway, it's good.
Just keep thinking of the second.
A second is a very, very... We were even happy with a fourth, but a second is even better than that. So it's a first day, and we haven't broken anything. So that is easily the most important thing.
I call that a result.
That's a result. People and boat come back in one piece. It's good.
So that was the Cape 31 story, and exciting it is, and it's still continuing because protests are still happening. But let's look at the other featured class of the day here on day one, and that is the J70. First class away from the start line, and a pretty competitive fleet.
It's a really super competitive fleet, and it's great to see them back here with a good strong fleet. I think they've got 35 boats or something like that, but great racing. What was interesting about that start was, as you say, they were the first away, and anybody who'd looked at the tidal atlas and the weather and the conditions would have seen that it was going to be quite tricky to decide which end of the line to start on. Did you start close in and take the west going tide that was just sort of starting to develop, but there was less wind in there, and there was more risk as well, because if you got stuck in close to the shore, close to the squadron, there was a risk that you might not be able to thread your way out, and you might also get yourself tangled up in all kinds of traffic. So do you do that, or do you start further out on the outer end, towards the outer end of the line, where the tide was actually running against you. But there was more breeze and you had more space. So it was quite a tricky decision to make. And the reason it was so significant was that they were the first class off. So the other classes that were behind them wanted to see how this played out, because it turned out throughout the day to be a very key part of the race, because if you could get away early, you had quite an advantage.
Okay, let's take a look.
20 seconds to go here, 20 seconds to go.
Yeah,
Looks
a couple
like
of boats very early on the line, 1572, that's Brutus.
looking very early.
Holding back.
That's it, and we can see them all diving down here, desperately trying to stay the right side of the line before the start gun goes. Still only got 6 seconds to go, 5. It looks like 1169 is going to be pushed over.
Oh, very well over, yeah. Jeepster is
Totally
over. Individual recall.
That'll be 1179, sorry, so they're definitely going to have to go back.
Jeepster, yes, they're going back now.
1227, absolutely rocking it off the start line here, and they're going to be first into the beach. You'll start to hear them all screaming as they look for water. They're going to need room to tack out. The whole fleet is going to have to be bumped off. This is one of the really challenging parts of Cowes Week, is trying to tailor it. You've got to get the right spot on the start line and create enough space for you to be able to tack and get out. Boats just starting to tack at the lead of the fleet there.
Yeah, 264 Jellyfish is going back across the line. They decided that they were early.
You can see on our picture here a couple of boats returning back through the fleet there. It's going to be really hard to get back through the fleet, get back to the start line.
It certainly is, because of that. But there we go, and yep, Jellyfish is going back, but a lot of port and starboard going on here.
Big duck for 1573. They've got to keep clear.
Exciting stuff on that first start on the J70s, and that tide, a big influence on quite a few of those boats. So tide was shown to be a big factor, huh?
It certainly was, because if you could get away early, by the time you turned the top mark at the top of the course, you were then going back down with the tide, so you sort of got accelerated away. The interesting thing for the J70s was that they had a very long day today, because they had 3 races. So that was what some of them have been calling their delivery race, but it sort of, they had a race that finished in a different part of the Solent, and then they had 2 more races after that. So they had a full-on day today. And interestingly, by the time they came back, the breeze had really picked up, and they had a good old downwind blast to their last finish, which was great fun. Certainly looked great fun anyway. Not everybody managed to keep the rig on top of the boat as they came down there. They had a few problems with jibes, but it was pretty entertaining and great to watch. And I caught up with one of the sailors there, a chap called Bruce Grant, who is a former International 14 sailor, no stranger to high-performance sailing, and he told me how the day had gone.
We're on Endeavour 738. It's one of a squadron charter boats, and this is our 2nd year of having a go.
Just give us an overview of what today was like, because it was more than one race for you for a start, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. What the J70s have organised is a 4-day series of 3 races each day, and that is really, really good. 12 race series, and generally you get the pros or the people who are regulars doing really well, and the charter fleet will also have a go at the pros. So it's just great racing. 3 races today, a passage race over to the Hillhead Plateau, which was tough Spinnaker Reach. That was really good. And then the second race was 2 sausages, and the third race essentially a passage race back.
Now that first passage race, as you describe it, we watched the start of that, and that looked pretty it was full on for a lot of classes actually, with that tide sweeping over the line. How did it pan out for you?
Well, we'd elected to start a little bit further out, which gives you the benefit of anybody who's over the line inshore is going to block you out. So there were, I understand, 12 boats who were over the line. So having crossed the finish line 15th, we've popped up to 3rd. But that is yacht racing, and suddenly starting hidden is a very useful technique to use. So just by starting further out, a little bit more blinded from the race officials, that can work. If you're not seen, you didn't do it. So that's yacht racing.
Who do you think won that race?
Oh, I've not had a chance to look myself. That's all hearsay.
No problem at all. And so in the second 2 races that you did, how'd you get on there?
We had something like a 12th and a 17th. So for us, as I say, a charter boat, coming above 20th, I think is quite a good result. This is a hot fleet, 32 boats in the fleet, and a lot of really good sailors who've been doing it a lot of time. So, you know, if you're getting in the mid-teens, that's a pretty good result for us, certainly. So I know we'll be about 10th or 12th overnight, I would hope.
Nice, and it is, as you say, it's an intense fleet. It's been, It's been a very, very popular fleet right from the start, hasn't it? How are you finding it? Is it because it's not necessarily the fastest boat in the world, and as a 14 sailor, former 14 sailor yourself, you know all about speed. But how are you finding it? Is it the intensity of the racing that grabs you, or what is it?
It's the one design. It's the fact that even the charter boats are put together really well. They're kept really well, and as opposed to owning the boat, I just turn up and I go sailing, and the sails are on board. It's beautifully prepared. It's a good deal. It's a really good deal.
So lots of action in our chosen featured classes, the J70 and the Cape 31s. Sunday we have Red Wings and we have SP20s. Look forward to seeing those. But of course there was plenty other starts here on day one, and for me, Fargo, Bertie Bickett in IRC 0 made a fantastic port tack start, right tight into us at the squadron for everyone to watch, and he got away into the tight tacking. How about you?
Well, for me, I mean, that was a very impressive manoeuvre, particularly as we'd seen it not work for other people as well. So hats off to him and his crew for pulling that one off. For me, the other thing that stood out was actually the XODs, because they're the biggest fleet here for a start. And suddenly the line looked rather crowded. I mean, it does look quite long most of the time, but when you've got 60-odd boats on there, it starts to look a little smaller. And of course, they're all very, very competitive. And by that stage, the tide had fully turned. So we were seeing a completely different picture. And what impressed me was seeing how various people managed to pull themselves out of the pack, because you couldn't take anything for granted on that start. If you thought you were in a position where you had clear air, well, good luck, because in sort of 30 seconds, 60 seconds time, you might find yourself buried. So it was a fascinating start to watch.
Yes, and XODs quite often have black flag starts, or at least general recalls, and they didn't. They all got across before the gun went, and to a big applause from the platform and the officers. We enjoyed that. Well, that's the end of day one, and Today in Cowes. We'll be back tomorrow with Matt Sheehan and Steve Ansell.